I forgot to press play. Hi, I'm Effie, and I apologise if the exposure is off in this video. I have just filmed another video that involved me cracking into this bottle of wine, and I will also be having a little bit of wine with this video, but in this video I'll be drinking from my Tyrion mug, which I feel like is appropriate because we're going to be getting into the tea surrounding Sarah J Maas. Some of it is going to be more light-hearted, but some of it is going to be dangerous and problematic, and we're just going to be chatting about it. So grab yourself a drink. Feel free to join me in having an alcoholic beverage, but if that's not your style, then might I suggest a variety of tea, as I feel like this is a video that we're going to be sipping tea. So this video is going to be largely from my perspective. I am a queer, non-binary person, but beyond that, I'm not going to be able to pick up on everything. That Maas may not be the best human being with. So I did try to make notes of potentially problematic elements in her books when I recently did a reread, and I am going to be so far away from being great at picking them all up. My original intention was to structure this video into kind of ways that Sarah J Maas is personally problematic and then ways that her books are problematic. But I'll be honest, my notes are kind of higgledy-piggledy and a mix of everything mixed together. I also think that there's likely to be crossover between the points that I'm making. I have some points on my phone, so I will be referring to my phone throughout. And I should also make you aware that I may be talking about specific details about specific books that Maas has written, but what I will try to do is I'll try to put in the chapters mentions of what the books are. So if I'm talking about a book that you haven't read from Sarah J Maas and you intend on reading and don't want to be spoiled, I don't think any of these things relate to big picture things, but they might relate to more lower level things, and everyone has a different tolerance for spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then hopefully I will have set up the chapters in such a way that you'll be able to skip through and just kind of go to the next section and be able to avoid hearing about that particular thing. The reason that I wanted to put together this video was that I was hemming and hawing about whether I wanted to do a vlog about House of Flame and Shadow. And then I thought, oh, well, I like that I had my responses to certain moments in House of Sky and Breath on video because I put up a vlog on that. And I basically decided that the way that I could ethically do that was by having a full picture of things. I also think that it's something that, I'm terrible at doing my research, but it's something that I feel like people kind of don't have the information necessarily all the time. And that's not to say that people aren't talking about why Maas is problematic, but that, people are using their own experiences and justifications for supporting Sarah J Maas. And ultimately, a lot of the issues that are with Sarah J Maas, I feel like it's honestly not my place to speak on whether there is harm or not. So the approach I'm taking with the vast majority of the things in this video is just kind of, well, not a statement of fact, because no one is truly neutral, But these are the things that are in her books. So kind of this is the information and do with it what you will. Did I tell you what the vibe for this video is? The vibe for this video is basically you are sitting down with a drink with me. So I've got my handy dandy bottle of wine that I've just put the last of in my mug, which feels like I'm trying to discreetly drink it, but I just haven't washed my stemware because I don't use it enough, so it needs a wash before using it. But my mug is half full because that's all the wine I had left, but my mug is half full with red wine. Anyway, let's just talk about Sarah J Maas. Some of these you're probably going to be like, oh, that's a really minor point, but it's just kind of my notes app on my phone trying to put thoughts together. So the first one was me just thinking it was kind of funny, if I'll be honest. And it was the fact that I want to say it was a Court of Wings and Ruin, and that's what I will have put in the chapters. But in A Court of Wings and Ruin, Feyre is thinking about the lady of the Autumn Court's marriage, and the fact that she was young at 20 when she was married, but the fact that Feyre is also 20 at that time is kind of funny to me. The fact that there's not that level of self-awareness to be like, oh, this person was really young. I'm the same age. That's really surprising. But I just think it's a weird double standard of Feyre being like, oh, the lady of the Autumn Court was so young when she got married. But then she herself is the same age. I think she's also technically married, but I'm not 100% sure because it all happens off page. And kind of related to young things, we've got in Assassin's Blade, Ansel and Mikhail's relationship was very briefly acknowledged as ick, but didn't really acknowledge how effed up it was. Apologies there. I didn't realise I had written that in my notes and I was reading them verbatim. But I can't remember the age difference, but I think Ansel was maybe like 18 and Mikhail was in his 20s. Yes, he ends up dying at the end of their particular story. But there's something that I didn't enjoy about the fact that it wasn't really examined. And even if it had just been a throwaway line about the fact that Ansel had killed him because he was her abuser, or she recognised that their age difference wasn't good, wasn't appropriate, I would have appreciated, especially as someone who was personally groomed. It wasn't something that I loved, and I think it's also kind of problematic to be present in a young adult book because it normalizes those kind of relationships, and an adult-child relationship should never be normalized, and that is just really unfortunate and something that I wish I'd picked up on the first time that I read the Throne of Glass series, because it was a big issue for me. And I hate that it was never examined, or at least it wasn't examined to the extent that I feel like it should have been examined, especially in a young adult novel, and especially when this was kind of a side character's romance and it shouldn't have been normalized. I don't know. I'm really sorry. I don't have apparently the vocabulary to properly talk about it, but on a personal level, it really bothered me. The next bullet point that I had was kind of a spicy one, and that is Nehemia. So this is in relation to Crown of Midnight, but it's something that continues throughout the whole of the series. But the significant spoilery element is in relation to what happens in Crown of Midnight. And that is Nehemia's death. And I feel like even within the mega fans of Sarah J Maas, I feel like this is something that is very much acknowledged. And that is the fact that Nehemia, a POC character, honestly, I'm not sure if she's intended to be black or if she's coded as being South Asian. There's a part of me that, well, you know, my white interpretation is that she's more South Asian than black, but regardless, she's a POC character, and she's one of the very few POC characters that we have. I think she is portrayed as being dark-skinned, but that's not to say that South Asians can't be dark-skinned. It's just to say that my interpretation of the way that her characterization is portrayed is such. You know, I could get into why I think that's the case, but regardless, you have a POC character that orchestrates her own murder in order to advance the narrative of the white character, and that's just messed up. You know, like, I think, well, I know this would be an issue even if she didn't orchestrate her own death. I've just splashed wine in my eyes. Oh my gosh. The fact that Nehemia's death is the catalyst to Selena actually getting off her butt and doing something about the horrendous colonialism that exists within her country, state, I don't know, it's not terribly clear. But the fact that Nehemia's death is used as a catalyst is already an issue. But the fact that you then subsequently find out that she orchestrated it just makes it so much more problematic, and I hate it. I hate it here. I hate it here so much. And I think the next point kind of advances that even further. So this is something that happens in Heir of Fire, and I can't remember the point in Heir of Fire that it occurs, but the fact that the murder of all of the prisoners at Endovia and Calacola was needed as motivation to get her backside in gear. And honestly, again, this was something that, to my shame, I didn't pick up on the first time that I read this series, but Nehemia's death wasn't enough for Selena to do what needed to be done. And we needed not only one POC character, but multiple POC characters and, you know, further characters of not POC relation, because Selena is not POC, so non-POCs are sent to these slave camps. But regardless, we have POC characters and slaves of all races are sent to these slave camps, and they are all murdered, and that is what Selena needs to further her plot. And I just think to write that kind of perspective takes a... Sorry, I got wine on my face again. And to write that kind of perspective takes a special level of privilege. The idea that the death of one POC character was bad enough, but it takes the death of massive swathes of POC characters to propel your white main character to do what is correct and what is right is kind of disgusting. And it's not a narrative that I can get behind. And I think that's probably why I don't love the Throne of Glass books, because it's so rooted in such problematic systems of oppression, and it shouldn't take this catalyst for you to realise that colonialism and racism is not the way forward. You shouldn't be able to go, la la la, I'm just going to ignore it all. I'm just going to live my life being an assassin. It's not the correct thing to portray. And I think that is only made worse by the fact that this series is targeted at young adults, which are teenagers. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on the fact that I think young adults is a misleading age categorization. But these are books that are targeted at teenagers, whether correctly or incorrectly. You are telling teenagers that this is an appropriate stance. Like, you need to see injustice in the world for you to feel like it's appropriate for you to take action. It makes me so frustrated at the fact that this is what Maas wrote. Okay, yes, maybe she was young, but real life BIPOC people do not have the luxury. BIPOC people face this as children. Very young children face this discrimination. So why should we give space to a white young woman, teenager, whatever age Sarah J Maas was when she wrote this? Why is it okay? Like, it's not okay. And that's the answer to it, really. My next point was, in A Court of Silver Flame, the discussion of Rhys becoming High King happens in a sentence where conquering / colonizing is described as his birthright. And that reminded me of the fact that, for whatever reason, probably disgusting Zionist reasons, but trips for Jewish people to visit Israel, free Palestine. I can't believe that months later I'm still having to say this. Like, people want the end to this genocide. Why is this not ended already? The fact that the specific word of birthright is used just triggered a bit in my brain that went, why? Why? Is that something that you thought was appropriate? Like, do not equate colonization and that kind of garbage to being someone's birthright. No, it's not your birthright to colonize all of Prithian. This may be a fantasy, but obviously no book is written in a vacuum. So you can't divorce a book from real life. And, you know, I'm not the kind of reader that judges other readers. This video is made with the intention of, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest, white guilt, saying I feel terrible and guilty for putting, well, multiple videos out about House of Flame and Shadow. So in order to balance that, I need a video where I'm talking about why Sarah J Maas is not a great author. And I've lost my point. I'm really sorry. Maybe drinking most of a bottle of wine whilst trying to film videos around Sarah J Maas was not the best idea. But I think also, you know, in addition to the white guilt element of filming this video, there is the element of, I want readers who choose to watch my video and find out the information that I'm putting out on Sarah J Maas, and I'm not going to say that this is going to be everything because it comes with the biases of my experience. But, you know, if you are choosing to read these books, then these are the things that you should maybe know exist within the books. I don't know. But I just think that it was a very interesting choice of words. And I think probably speaks to Maas's inherent biases and the unlearning that she needs to do, which I'm sure we will get to later in this video, because I know 100% I have a point about it. The next point is, I don't know, probably slightly more lightweight, and it is the fact that in Wings and Ember, which is the bonus chapter that Bloomsbury has made available on their website, and I think it was the bonus chapter for A Court of Mist and Fury, and it is a chapter that takes place between Nesta and Cassian. And in this book, I think it's Cassian's internal monologue, but he talks about the fact that when he had sex with Moore, he could literally feel Moore's hymen breaking. And I just, oh my gosh, the levels of I just can't with that statement. Okay, so I am not someone who has a penis, so I can't speak from experience, but I feel like, well, one, the fact that the hymen is a definer of virginity is problematic in itself, because, well, you know, it's rooted in heteronormity, but also there's the idea that a P&V is the only way that a hymen can break. And scientifically, we know that is not the truth. We know that hymens may not be intact for a multitude of reasons. So that is issue number one. Issue number two is, I'm not sure that someone with a penis would be able to literally feel a hymen breaking. But also, that's a really weird way of phrasing and talking about someone that is your close friend and has been your close friend for, I don't know, like 400, 500 years. It made me uncomfortable, and it reinforced a lot of things that shouldn't be reinforced. And again, like, as much as I have a personal opinion on the fact that I don't think the ACOTAR series is correctly marketed if you're trying to say that the ACOTAR series is for young adults, I do not believe that the ACOTAR series was ever for young adults. I think it was a misogyny in publishing situation, because ultimately I'm not someone that gets to have an opinion on sex in books for people who are teenagers, because it's not relevant to me. I am neither a teenager nor have teenagers in my life. But I think personally the amount of sex that we have even in the first book in the ACOTAR series puts it into the new adult category, as in people who are actually legitimately adults, as opposed to the young adult category, which I have a issue with the fact that it's called young adults, because it is adultifying teenagers. Because a young adult, in my mind, which is very linear and very, an adult is an adult and it is not a teenager, but a young adult to me would never be someone below the age of 18. But I know that young adult does not mean 18 plus. Young adult means 14 to 18. Wow, I got sidetracked, but basically hymens, being able to literally feel a hymen breaking with your penis was a really weird move. And then we've got questionable representation, where people argue over whether Rhys and the Illyrians are white or not. So this is a case where at the end of the day, my voice is not important, but I'm just stating that this is a thing that exists within these books. So Rhys and all of the Illyrians, which is Illyrians as a whole is an important thing to point out, that I believe Illyrians are actually real people in the real world. And as a result of the ACOTAR series, it's very difficult to actually find out information about people, like real people, who are defined as Illyrians. But in Sarah J Maas's work, and I think the vast majority of her books are kind of like this, it very much seems like the characters are deliberately racially ambiguous. But I think that is particularly the case when you're looking at the characters in the ACOTAR books, because you start off with the character of Rhysand, and then, you know, you further get the characters of the Illyrians. And when it comes to them, generally their descriptions are along the lines of them being tan, which gives Maas the ability to be like, oh, they were POC all along. But it also gives her the plausible deniability when you get fan art where these characters are very much white, to be like, oh yeah, I never meant them to be a POC. Or when she uses words that you wouldn't want to associate with POC characters, to go, oh no, I'm not racially stereotyping. These characters were not meant to be POC. And that makes me uncomfortable. But I think another thing that makes that problematic difficult is the fact that it creates a division in the fandom. And don't get me started on how toxic Sarah J Maas fans are. I think particularly in the ACOTAR community, they are toxic. But that's a conversation for another time. You know, sorry, I'm sure you can hear my chair squeaking. You know, the fans aren't ideal, but that is not what we're talking about today. Oh, my next point follows on from that. I'm so sorry for how squeaky my chair is. And that is the way that the Illyrians are depicted as savage. And I think that is a choice in sparkly emojis, because ultimately, you know, if Maas's intention was never for these characters to be POC, I don't know. But if Maas's intention was for the Illyrians to be POC, depicting them as savages is really kind of disgusting, if I'm honest, and makes me deeply uncomfortable, the fact that you have these characters that are POC in the books and they are savages. I mean, completely an absolute aside, but maybe not, because I am Scottish, but Prythian is very much based on a map of the British Isles. And interestingly enough, where I live, I think, would be roughly based on the steps. You know what? Let me get my copy of ACOTAR so I can figure it out. Okay, so I just realised that I've actually lent my copy of ACOTAR out to B. So this is A Court of Mist and Fury, but the map's the same. So this is the map of Prythian. And as you can see, it very much resembles the British Isles. Kind of like a slightly squidgy, but it very much resembles the British Isles. And Highburn is Ireland, which again is a choice. But where I live is kind of like the Illyrian steppes. And yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I kind of live in the Illyrian steppes. So I guess now that I'm thinking about it, at the very best, Maas is equating Highlander Scots to savages and is basically saying that the English were okay to colonize Scotland. And no. Just absolutely no. And at the very worst, she's basically saying that POC characters in the world that she's created are savages. Although, I don't know. It's very difficult. And also, you know, I need to point out here that Scots come in all skin tones. So you can have a person. Obviously, you can have a person. Diversity exists. But you can have a person who is black and also Scottish. So, double whammy there, I guess. I'm really sorry. I'm very much in my cups. And I've almost finished my wine. I do have some Prosecco left, but hopefully this is all making sense. The next point is more about Maas as a person. And when I talk about this, I feel like I should point out that generally Maas, for all of her flaws, seems to be following the Aaron Burr school of thought, in that she does a very good job of talk less, smile more. In that, in recent years, yes, she's posted about a couple of things, but generally her presence online is limited to book promotions. So honestly, it's very difficult to know what her stance is on things. Although the next point that I have to make, considering how easy it is to archive or private a post on Instagram, is completely a choice. At the time of, well, I suppose not technically at the time of filming this video, but at the time of me researching for this video, and when I'm editing this, if I'm still able to find the post live, I will include images to show you. But Maas made a very weird post on Instagram where she used the injustice of the fact that the murderers of Breonna Taylor were not sentenced as murderers to promote her book. And if I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, which honestly, she shouldn't receive the benefit of the doubt, and she would only be afforded the benefit of the doubt if she had privated the video, or if she'd posted something in response to the criticism she received, or if this post was not currently live at this point in time. But she used that as a way of promoting her latest book, and it was so incredibly tone deaf, so incredibly insensitive, and just overall just disgusting. It makes me confused, because whilst I think she should have issued some kind of statement or apology, going, whether it was heartfelt or not, like, it should have been heartfelt. Like, if she was going to do this disgusting thing, I would like to have thought that she'd done it not from a place of harm, but in a place of she didn't recognise her white privilege. But that's probably giving her far too much credit. But she didn't acknowledge it. She hasn't updated the post, and this is several years later. And I don't understand how she can, in good conscience, have that post still available on her Instagram. It's not as if it's the only post talking about her book ever. And it's not as if Instagram doesn't allow you the ability to edit a caption. Yes, everything that you post on the internet exists forever, but it would have shown some kind of growth, some kind of opening her ears and actually listening to what the community is saying if she had updated her post. Yes, people will have still had screenshots and will have still had the receipts to say this is what Maas did at some point in her career. But it wouldn't have still existed as something on her Instagram feed. But when I was doing the research for this video, it was still there. She was still blatantly using the injustice about the murder of Breonna Taylor to promote, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, the paperback edition of A Court of Silver Flames. And I just can't understand the level of tone deafness to go, oh yes, Breonna Taylor was murdered, but her murderers weren't, why can't I remember the word? Weren't sentenced, weren't found guilty of her murder. So have this announcement that the paperback edition of my book is coming out. Like, what? What in the crazy levels of white privilege? Wow. I'm so sorry. I do still have a little bit of wine left, and I still have my half bottle of Prosecco, but I'm so sorry my words are not coming out correctly. But what in the white privilege are you doing here? And why did you not edit this post several years ago when everyone pointed out how ridiculous this post was? And then we have her Zionism. And this is where, okay, so what you need to know about me is I am very much a benefit of the doubt person when people likely do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I am stating what I have found in research for this book. And that is that several years ago, and as I say, Sarah J Maas subscribes to the camp of Smile More, Talk Less. Several years ago, Sarah J Maas did an interview, and I believe it was for a Jewish news site, magazine, etc. And whilst Judaism obviously is not an excuse for Zionism, I do fully understand that people who are brought up in the Jewish faith, who are potentially indoctrinated into the beliefs of Zionism, do have a long way to go to unpack their Zionism. You know, that could come with the biases, etc. So there was a few, this was several years ago. I can't remember how many years ago it was. And Maas has not made a statement on this particular issue in the years that have subsequently passed. But essentially, Maas talked about going on a birthright trip, which, to my understanding, are trips that are free to Jewish people in order for them to visit Israel. But I also understand that they are almost like propaganda trips, and they're done in such a way in order to promote the messaging of Zionism. And there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm honestly not the right person to unpack. So Maas talked about going on a birthright trip and how it was an experience for her. And ultimately, I think that's the intention of birthright trips. And to me, bringing my own biases into this is a person that has not unpacked the messaging of Zionism. But she also made comments about her grandmother, I think, and I believe her grandmother is named Camilla, something like that. And she is a Holocaust survivor, and I, for my sins, have not looked in deeply enough to the way that people that survived that may subscribe to Zionism, but I also am aware that the reason that Israel exists in its current form was as a result to anti-Semitism, and there was a lot of problematic things that led to Israel existing in its current form. But whatever, I'm trying to give the full facts as I understand them. And essentially, this grandmother, according to the article, still regularly volunteers with their name is technically the Israel Defense Force, but what are they defending against? They are just murdering innocent people and committing a ongoing genocide. But yes, in this same article, Maas basically talked about being proud of this grandmother. But this is something that appeared in an article several years ago, and because Maas has not made a statement in the affirmative or the negative, we just have to go by the fact that Maas potentially is Zionist and fully supports what is modernly dubbed as the Israeli offensive force, who are indiscriminately committing a genocide. And then back to her books. So we have this is something that I'm going to put an asterisk in. I don't know why I'm doing air quotes, bunny ears, whatever. But I'm going to put an asterisk in because on reread, I didn't see this. But that's not to say it didn't exist, because it's something that stuck in my mind from the first time I read it. But there's a character in Kingdom of Ash who is, I think the label would be pansexual. In a fantasy world, the labels are not so strictly applied or named as such, but I think this character is pansexual in our understanding in our world. But I also think that this character kind of cheats, and it's sort of the cheating bisexual trope, which obviously is so incredibly problematic. Like, just because someone has an attraction to multiple genders does not mean that in a situation where monogamy is desirable, they are unable to be monogamous. And I hate that here. As I say, I didn't pick up on it on my reread, but it's something that's stuck in my mind. And honestly, I just hate the character of Aiden. I think he doesn't deserve Lysandra. I finished my wine, so we are on to Prosecco. I think I should have one glass left. Oh, it's slightly pink because I had wine in it previously. I don't know if it shows up on camera as being slightly pink. Okay, so what's next? I don't know. I need to look at my notes. Ooh. I'm reaching that point where I can't properly see straight, but it's enjoyable. I'm enjoying coming on this journey with you and telling you all the issues that I've had with Maas. Okay, the next point is Thunderbird. Okay, so I, to my disgrace and to my shame, have not done the proper research on this point, but I remember very vividly when Turfling came out with, and sorry, I should be clear here, I'm talking about J.K. Rowling. I'm not talking about Maas being a TERF. I have no evidence at all to support the fact that she may be a TERF, and probably is not. But when Turfling brought out the houses of the American University, I remember the uproar, I think, about one of the houses or multiple of the houses being about Native American folklore. And I'm pretty sure one of those is a Thunderbird. I'm pretty sure a Thunderbird is Native American mythology. And that is something that is very important to the plot of House of Sky and Breath. But one, I'm not sure how well the characterization is handled, and two, I'm not sure if Maas is the appropriate person to write about those. And yeah, I'm really sorry. I wish I'd done better research, and I'm just a mess. Like, my next point is just kale, and I don't know what my point was about kale. Apparently kale is an issue. Oh yes. And then the further point, or the next point in the list, because I don't know what my point was about kale. I really wish past me had said what. Like, you can see I literally have a bullet point that just says kale, which is not helpful. Like, why, past Effie? Why did you decide kale was enough of a point? Oh, kale being disabled. So, at the end of Queen of Shadows, Kale ends up being disabled by the events of the finale of the book. And again, I am able-bodied, so Kale is physically disabled by the events at the end of Queen of Shadows. And I know from hearing opinions from the community that people do not appreciate the way that Kale and his approach to his physical disability are portrayed in Empire of Storms. That's not the right book. Tower of Dawn. I think, well, honestly, like, it's not my place to say. It's just to say that I've heard that the disability representation is somewhat problematic, and the magical healing trope is also problematic, and we are not here for it, honestly. You know, at the end of the day, the vast majority of the things in this video are going to be just things that I've picked up with my own perception of the world, but I have tried to put in things that I've heard from other people who have other experiences and are personally impacted, as far as I have heard. And yeah, I've heard that the disability rep when it comes to Kale is not ideal, and that is me being very British, very Scottish. And when I say not ideal, I mean it is actually disastrously bad. Okay, so the next point is to do with yielding, and that is in reference to, I'm going to say Kingdom of Ash. So in Kingdom of Ash, yielding of the witch clans. So if you're happening to watch this video and haven't read the books that I'm referencing, in Kingdom of Ash, there are, well, in previous books, but this is relevant to the book of Kingdom of Ash. In Kingdom of Ash, we have these witches who generally do not have magic as such, but they're able to do this thing where essentially when they kamikaze is the only way I can describe it. Like, they choose to die, and as a result of them dying, they release a massive blast of energy. And I don't know, I think it's really weird messaging to put across that suicide is noble by the way that the yieldings, which is what these kamikaze of the witches essentially is, but it's putting across that yielding is a noble thing, and I don't think that's a thing that is neutral and is problematic as such. Oh yeah, so in the Crescent City series, specifically in House of Earth and Blood, and specifically on page 228, if you're interested, humans in Crescent City have to do 3 years in the military, which feels like is a parallel to the IDF. So this is something that I guess my benefit of the doubt brain is talking about and is saying, oh, well, maybe it's mass unpacking, but maybe it's not. Probably not. I mean, I wish I had the mind that wasn't so willing to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, because honestly, very few people really deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I thought it was interesting because I actually tried to do the research, and essentially 3 years is an oddly specific number, which, as far as I could tell, in my very, very limited knowledge, relates specifically to men who are of particular Jewish faith. There are exemptions of certain sects of Judaism, but relates specifically to Jewish men in Israel having to do 3 years of military service in what is called the IDF, but they're not defending against anything. They're just committing a genocide. I thought it was interesting that the number 3 was picked, and also the fact that in House of Earth and Blood, this was not positioned as a thing that was positive, and it was explicitly positioned as a thing that was negative. I think there's an argument to be made about humans being viewed as outsiders, even though humans are native to the world of Midgard. Well, humans and I think the Mer are native to Midgard, but they're almost viewed as othered, which, I don't know, as I'm filming this feels really weird, because it's essentially saying that, you know, if you're saying that we're equating this to the IDF, you're saying that humans are Palestinians. I don't know. I just thought that was a point I should make in terms of balance and whatnot. Okay, the last few points I think are fairly brief. I'm officially out of drink. So, we have, at one point, I don't know what book it is, but Rune in one of the Crescent City books mentions about someone having a fit, as in a seizure, as a result of, well, I mean, I know it's not limited to epilepsy, but, you know, along the lines of epilepsy or that kind of thing. And recommending that a wooden spoon is put into their mouth. And I just want to say, no, do not put anything in people's mouths when they're having a seizure. And honestly, this is kind of a smaller point, but also not, because it's a choke hazard. But do not put things in people's mouths when they're seizing. And that's a really problematic thing to put in your books. But on the scale of POC character orchestrates their own death to let's put a wooden spoon in someone's mouth as they're having a seizure, you know, it feels like the other end almost. And then we've got, you know, I just looked at the list and I forgot. And then we've got Hawaii. So, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Sarah J Maas moved to Hawaii because she is rich and she just decided, why not? Like, there is so much issues about colonialism and the fact that native Hawaiians are no longer able to live and buy property on their own island. So the fact that Maas, a white woman, has the privilege to be able to just up sticks and decide to move to Hawaii in the middle of a global pandemic is just not great. And I don't like it. Of course I don't like it. And then the final point relates to AI images. And for this one, I'm gonna give Maas probably more benefit the doubt than she deserves. But I think it was the UK editions of the paperback House of Sky and Breath and House of Flame no, not Flame and Shadow, House of Earth and Blood used AI images, and obviously there's a whole conversation around using AI artwork, but those paperback editions specifically used AI art. And, you know, whilst I'm very aware that authors do not have a say in the covers that are used for their books, I think that Maas probably has enough say to be able to actually say, no, this is not okay, I don't want this to happen with my books. So I'm going to say that's in the column of things that are problematic to her. But yeah, I hope this video made sense, and it was never my intention for this to cover every single thing. So I apologise if there's massive things that I've missed. Please feel free in the comments to mention things that I have not covered in this video, because I would love this to be a place of discussion and conversation. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for joining me. And if you enjoyed seeing me discuss this is slightly different from my usual content, but if you enjoyed seeing me discuss this, I would love to have you along for more videos, so maybe consider subscribing. But obviously, I love that you've made it this far in this video, so love you. Bye. You still here? Well, have I got some tea? Sarah J Maas, or presumably Sarah J Maas, these are all filed by Fireheart Inc., has tried to trademark a wide variety of things. Some of them are valid, some of them less so. So the list of things she's currently attempting to trademark, and excuse me whilst I look down at my laptop to read these all out, are Sarah J Maas, Lunathian, Akatar, Rhysand, Hunt Athalar, Feyre, SJM, Aelin, Valaris, Fireheart, Throne of Glass, Suriel, Bryce, Illyrian, Nesta, and Umbra Mortis. And honestly, like, I could make a whole video going through and reading through these trademark applications. Anyone can find this information on the US trademark website. I think that's what it's called. You search US trademark and you can search for it. If you just search by owner and just search Fireheart, they are the first 10 results, or however many it is, that come up, and you can just read through all of the stuff. But it is very interesting. One of the things that I'm seeing is that they may get rejected because you can't trademark a character. I have no knowledge about law, and I especially don't know anything about US law, but if you'd like me to make a video where I go through all of these and like read through all the documentation, let me know and I will make that video. But I think it's interesting seeing the kind of things that she's attempting to trademark, especially because some of these you feel like she has no right to try and trademark. Like Illyrian, as mentioned earlier in the video, Illyrians were very much a race of people, so trying to trademark the word Illyrian is bad. I'll link in the description a kind of like blog post I found that kind of broke down each of these things that she's trying to trademark and why maybe she doesn't have a right. But one of the things that I didn't previously know was I think the Suriel is an angel, obviously not in Maas's books, but apparently like historically the Suriel is an angel. So trying to trademark something that is a biblical figure is questionable at best. And then things like Fireheart, like Maas wasn't the first person to use the moniker of Fireheart for a character, although that is one of those where the documentation at present is saying, yeah, we don't know if you can actually trademark this because this is a character's name. You can't trademark a character's name. it's all very interesting, but also it takes a lot of like brass to be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna trademark these things that I have no right to. Obviously, like things like Valaris, I'm not gonna say, oh, you can't trademark Valaris, because as far as I'm aware, she made up the name and everything around Valaris. But some of them you're going, yeah, back up there, miss. Or Mrs. Sorry. And yeah, that's it for now. As I say, let me know if you want me to make a video where I actually go through and read this stuff from the trademark office, because it is very interesting reviewing the paperwork. But now I will actually say goodbye, and this should be the end of the video. I'd fully edited this video before I found this information out, so this should be the actual end of the video. So again, love you. Bye.